I hope you're prepared because Hogwarts Legacy copies are now in the wild, which means the coming week is likely going to be very interesting, as well as one of new gameplay reveals and interviews to talk about new map footage and much more. On that note, I want to thank everyone for their incredible support over the past few weeks. To demonstrate my gratitude, I'm giving away a copy of Hogwarts Legacy Deluxe Edition. To enter, all you need to do is subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and make a comment below. The winners will be announced before the game launches. Now, let's begin with some fresh footage of the majestic Hippogriff Mount, one of our dependable allies who we will have to rescue at some point in the main plot. The game actually includes two of these, the white one being acquired from the story, and the onyx one being obtained from pre-ordering the game. However, as of right now, there is no official word on whether there is any difference between these aside from perhaps the color and possibly being able to get the pre-order. I would argue that getting Deluxe is still worthwhile because of the additional dark arts cosmetics, the arena, and especially the 72-hour early access. Speaking of early access, it's incredible to think that copies of Hogwarts Legacy have already been spotted in the wild. With such an eagerly awaited release, I just don't think the street date will last long before being broken. God of War Ragnarok had a notoriously strict embargo, yet copies still leaked out over a week in advance. The good news is that one copy is sufficient for family sharing to take advantage of the 72-hour early access, so if you have a buddy or sibling, both of you can play through family share. This is especially helpful if you just have one copy and are on a tighter budget. By the way, if you want to play even earlier than that, the New Zealand method will probably still be your best option. For PC and Xbox, it's very simple because you can use a VPN or just change your country or region to New Zealand and receive something like an 8-hour advantage. In order to purchase the game through the New Zealand PlayStation Network, PlayStation players must first create a New Zealand account. This process only needs to be done once, and you will be able to do it for any future releases regardless. We're getting a ton more information from the Hogwarts Legacy advanced game designer at Avalanche Studio, who did provide some additional insight into how certain aspects of the game will function, such as how the seasons change and how time passes. He mentions that the seasons pass exactly as seen in the movies and books, which means that as the plot develops, a new season begins in which a new one is introduced. He also had to say this about another important aspect, which is how house choices will influence your gameplay. So seems that there will be indeed effects on certain missions, others on the setting, which I'm not sure if it's translated correctly, maybe on the ambience. I'm getting a second translation on it as well, but he does mention that in general this is going to be very important which house you do choose. We also know that different houses will have different side quests you can go complete, and likely get unique rewards attached to them. Hence why the game supports so many separate characters save files, so you can go ahead have a ton of replayability and create other characters for other houses in mind. Other changes I noticed was the fact that countering enemies is a lot more forgiving than some of the higher difficulties, plus your character will take significantly less damage from combat spell attacks. This on top of the fact that many games on story mode cannot fail, plus the puzzles won't be time sensitive on that mode, which should make for a pretty relaxed experience for those who don't want much of a challenge. Great to hear though is that you deal still about the same damage as on the other difficulties, so victory should still feel earned, which I think is a nice balance even if you do go on the lower difficulties. Now a slightly more controversial view I've seen over the past few days, and especially since the recent previews got published, is that some people felt that NPCs seemed a bit too static in some of the released footage, but after my time spent with the game doing quite a bit more on top of what I was able to record, I can definitely tell you that this game has by far the least static or boring NPCs I've seen so far. Literally every single place I went into had tons of students doing something at all times. Some were practicing their spells, others were playing different wizarding sports, others were practicing their skills. Most of them also engaged in conversations, moved around and did a whole bunch of stuff that I've seen some of the other gameplay footage that I did not even know there were those interactions in the game. Many even made remarks about their own achievements or the player achievements before moving on, and this just covers the bare minimum of it. You will constantly see students fly by, and by the way, also like random events happening, including the one with thieves messing around with students. It's only one example, but there's many more that trigger in certain areas at specific times by just like going by, and even peeves will appear in other areas too. Furthermore, the game's designer confirmed Hogwarts is full of interest actions, and their goal was to make the school a living element of the world. Just wandering the corridors, you come across many puzzles that require to use the right spell at the right time for them to be solved. I don't want to give too many spoilers, he says, but I guarantee there is a lot to discover, specifically when talking about the castle. Furthermore, I think it became more clear to everyone that spells don't have just one use, and instead tons of environmental interactions and uses as well. What we saw is just a glimpse, but lots of puzzles and exploration elements will require you to use a lot of your spells. The same interview mentions that it was very important, if it was decided to add a particular spell, that spell should be able to be exploited in a whole bunch of different ways. Precisely for that reason, the game world offers several opportunities to solve all the little secrets that they scattered around. So that sounds really cool to me. Now on a more technical related notes, but despite recent delays for the old gen and Switch versions, the game still will drop on the Steam tag on its regular date, which is February 7th or 10th, depending if you get the deluxe edition or not. Expect a lot more Hogwarts Legacy content here on this channel, even more so, a lot more guides once the game launches. In the meantime, thanks much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Sign